Recording is on.
Alright, do you think we should wait like a minute or two and then start or okay.
Okay, guys, I think I'm gonna start us off now. Okay, so this is our college preparation workshop, and we're basically going to have a couple of guest speakers explain, tips on how to go through the application process, and also um, just advice for high schoolers in general that are going through the preparation leading to the college app process. Okay, Kimai, could you switch? Okay, yeah. So to introduce Saturday Scholars is basically a student-led nonprofit based in the capital region of New York. Our mission is to make STEM accessible beyond the classroom through virtual and in-person programs for students of all ages. Yeah, and a quick introduction. I'm Ishika.
I'm Kimaya.
And I'm John Luke.
Okay, yeah, and we're basically going to be helping this presentation run smoothly. Yeah.
So today we're going to start with a panel discussion of extracurriculars, essays, interviews, and programs. Then we're going to go through a college checklist of like a final checklist to consider before submitting to colleges. And then we're going to end with a Q&A for anyone to ask any questions to the panelists or about the general college process. So these are our panelists. First, we have Jeannie Liu.
Hi, my name's Jeannie. I went to Guilderland High School. I'm going to Cornell, majoring in chemistry, and my favorite class from my first semester was probably my chem class.
All right. Next, we have Isabella Wu.
Hi, my name is Isabella. I also went to Guilderland and I'm also going to Cornell. I'm majoring in computer science, and my favorite class was actually probably my first year writing seminar, which was anthropology.
And then we have Anthony Egan.
Hi, my name is Anthony Egan. I also went to Guilderland. I'm majoring in computational biology and statistics, and my favorite class was probably C++.
And finally, we have Vian Lai.
Hi, my name is Vienne. I went to Colony Central High School and now I go to Lehigh University. My major is pre-dental science with Penn Dental Medicine as part of a BADMD, and my favorite class so far has been my international relations seminar.
Thank you for all those introductions. And just to let you guys know, this meeting is being recorded to be sent out later. Yeah, so I think we can get right into it. I'm just gonna explain a little bit how this is gonna work. I'm just gonna basically toggle through all of these like topics that we're gonna touch on, and you guys, that in the order that we just introduced ourselves, I can also cue you guys in. You guys can just say whatever you want to say about that particular topic during the college process. So we're going to start with ECs and extracurriculars. Yeah, so we're going to start with Jeannie.
Yeah, so my main EC was that the summers going into my junior and senior year, I did some research at UAlbany. And I think that really helped my application to tell the story of why major specifically, because I didn't really do anything else that was specifically chem related. Um, and it was definitely good for me to diversify my extracurriculars, my ECs, not just for college, but because there's a lot of things I was interested in and I wanted to do. So there's also a lot of track and running related activities, and there was also like Empire State Youth Orchestra and some volunteering stuff with Chinese school.
Thank you. Isabella?
My ECs were actually a little bit all over the place. I had like your science Olympiad, but I also had like sports, student government. I had musical theater on there as well as instruments. And art and like working as a Python teacher. So it was a whole mix of things which didn't really connect. So it was one thing that I was a little worried about going into my applications. But I think the thing that tied everything that I had together and what really made my application a little stronger was the leadership I showed in each one of my ECs. So, like for clubs, I would put like club president, and then for track, I would put like captain, etc.
Awesome, thank you. And then Anthony?
My ECs were the exact opposite. Mine were really focused on STEM, and like I had research at RPI and Tsinghua, and like Science Olympiad, and I helped run like outreach with American Chemical Society, which I think helped me because I applied to a school that only did STEM, like within Cornell. But I think it's really good to diversify your ECs depending on where you're applying to and what program you're applying for.
Thank you. And finally, Vian.
So I went into high school knowing I wanted to apply to either a BSMD program or a BADMD program. It was just a matter of medicine versus dentistry. And I used some of my extracurriculars to make that distinction. So a lot of clinical shadowing just to narrow it down. And clinical shadowing is really important if you're applying to those types of programs. But then also, I really just pursued what I was passionate about. And I think that was what made my extracurricular involvement strong. I was part of Saturday Scholars. I founded our high school's debate club, and then I did a ton of other education work too. And in the end, I think there's no one extracurricular that's going to like for sure like get you into college. I think it's just how you write about what you do and the impact you make within those communities.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to any supplemental essay strategies, what your guys' thought process was during the essay process. Yeah, so we're going to start off with Jeannie.
Yeah, so I applied to Cornell ED, so I was pretty lucky to not have to have a ton of supplemental essays to write. For CAS specifically, they had one long supplemental essay that was, I think, 600 words, and it was basically a college why major essay, and I think it was really important for me to show that there was something specific about Cornell that I really wanted to go to, like why I really wanted to go there, and something that was pretty more personal and more unique to make you stand out. And as for the other supplemental essay, I remember it was something about a community that you were part of, and I think that was where I chose to let my more diverse ECs shine because I had already talked about my STEM passions in my Common App, so I wanted to use that use that supplemental as a way for me to show why I am more than just a STEM person. And going to the College of Arts and Sciences specifically, they like seeing that people have this diverse range of interests.
Thank you. I love that. And Isabella?
I was kind of the opposite. I applied to a lot of schools, and I think something that's really important is staying organized. So, I used Google Sheets to have like all my supplementals in a tracker. And once you write a certain amount of essays, you'll start to realize that a lot of the like central ideas are sort of overlapping. So you can kind of use a cookie cutter method, take out chunks of one essay and put them in another essay. Obviously, no two essays should be the same for two different schools because if they're the same, then you didn't make it specific enough to that school. But you can use something like take a couple sentences out of one essay that has the same ideas to help write your other essays and really get on top of that volume.
Thank you. Anthony?
Something I did a lot of research into the schools and like specific professors, especially when like it was like why major. I would talk about like I guess the department heads and like how they changed the field or whatever, and how I really wanted to study under them or something like that. And I did a lot of research into like the clubs and opportunities they have at the school, which I think is a good idea.
Thank you. And Vian?
Everyone else did a really good job of covering that, so I don't really know how much more I have to add. But I think that the supplementals are so important because they're the opportunity for admissions to see you beyond the stats on your application. So I think taking advantage of that and really letting your voice shine through when you're writing is really important because they're not looking for perfection, they're looking for people to add to their community.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. We're going to move on to the interview process. So if you have any experience with the college interview preparation, the process, Jean?
Yeah, so I didn't do any college interviews, so I think someone else would probably be a little better suited to answering this question.
Of course, Isabella.
I did a couple interviews, and I think the best way to practice with them is to get used to just talking about any one subject and being well versed in what you know you like. So, the ways I practiced, all of my interviews were online, so it made it a little easier for me being in like a setting that I knew, like I was just sitting in my house. But I would talk to myself in my room, which sounds crazy, but it does work. Like sometimes I would like make a list of topics, or you can search up mock interview questions online. Another good strategy is I talked to my upperclassmen friends that had gone through the same interviews, and they knew some of the regional people that would be interviewing like kids from Guilderland, and they knew what topics that they might come up in conversation, and I would just have them drill me. But all in all, I think an interview, it's never gonna harm you. So just like show your personality, show you're a cool person, talk about your interests, get to know the other person. It's just a way to connect with alumni, see if the school is the right fit for you, and I wouldn't stress about it too much.
Thank you for the explanation. And if Anthony and Vian, if you guys have anything to add.
I didn't do any interviews.
All of mine weren't traditional college interviews, and I can get into that in the next section.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, we're going to move on. This is about programs, specifically dual degree programs for medicine and dentistry. And Vian is going to start us off.
Hey guys, so again, I'm Vienne. I go to Lehigh as part of the 7-year biodental program with Penn Dental Medicine, and my expertise definitely leans more dental, but I'll try to give as much advice as I can for both. So what is a dual degree program? So these are like your BSMD programs, BSDO programs, BADMD, just like shuffle the letters even more. But they guarantee acceptance to your professional school at the time of undergrad acceptance. And a lot of these programs have stipulations like test score requirements, shadowing hours, things like that. But overall, they sort of streamline your path to medical or dental school by granting you provisional acceptance as a high school senior. For me, this program, I went for it because I had my heart pretty set on becoming a dentist, and it's a way for you to save time if it's accelerated, money on applying the second round, and stress during undergrad. Because if anyone knows any pre-med people or pre-dental people, they're like cramming in all this studying, all these classes, and just really trying to make an application that's strong. But if you can make a strong application now, you save yourself that trouble later. So focusing on med and dental today. So to start, if you're early in high school, how do you know if a dual degree program is a good fit? So if you're absolutely certain that medicine or dentistry is for you, then these programs are a really good option because again, they streamline the path. But if your interests are more varied, I'd really suggest going the route that our other panelists did today and going to a school that allows you to explore all of that. I know Cornell's really great. Like when I got my Cornell acceptance, I was really like torn between accepting my BADMD stuff or Cornell just because you could explore so much at Cornell. And there are ways to explore diverse interests within a dual degree program, even the more restrictive ones. It's just when you're in a program like this, you kind of have to keep your head focused on the end goal. So now if you've decided to apply, the first step, you got to cast your net far and wide. Although this makes your application process longer, you end up with more options at the end of the day, and that becomes so valuable when it comes to weighing finances, location, and things like that. And then when I say cast your net far and wide, this means like give schools you wouldn't have considered a chance. I didn't think I'd be going to college in Pennsylvania, but I am. And don't be intimidated by acceptance rates either. These programs have like single digit acceptance rates, but still it's worth it to apply because what if it works out? Then you've got a really great option. But then again, like casting your net responsibly is important. I know a lot of friends who don't want to leave New York for college just because of logistics and finances, and it's still possible to apply to these programs within your state and things like that. Just be mindful of the factors affecting your college application process and don't prioritize like a med school or a dental school spot over the best decision for yourself. So I'm not going to read this out because I'm hoping these slides will be made available to everyone. But these are some medical dual degree programs. They're broken down on the left by MD programs and on the right DO programs. I don't know enough about medicine to tell you which one is better or if one of them is better, but that's just so you know that there's a difference. And then dental dual degree programs. In dentistry, you can get a DMD degree or a DDS degree, but functionally they're the same, so it doesn't really matter too much. These are some that I applied to, and I can break that down more later. And then there are other provisional options, like let's say you don't want to commit as a high school senior. These programs you're able to apply to when you're already in college, whether you're a freshman or a sophomore, and they still accelerate your track to professional school. It just starts a little later. So step 2, writing your best statements. These programs, like Isabella said, you'll find a lot of situations where you can reuse some of the same content of your previous essays. And the 2 most common essays that I wrote were why this program and then why medicine or dentistry. And to answer those questions, you need to do research and reflect on your experiences. So this goes into what Anthony said, really get to know the school and program you're applying to. So researching your program, so a lot of programs have really different requirements for credit transfer, GPA, and your test scores to stay in the program. So by understanding that, you're like, okay, I know what I have to do to stay in, and that might also be a make or break in whether you apply to a program or not. Next, we can go back to the slide. You have to understand your undergrad school, because even though you have your heart set on a professional school, you still got to do undergrad. And you really want these programs to understand that you're interested in your undergrad school and that you'll still be really involved in that community. I really advise reaching out to admissions just so that your name is on their radar. And then you have to research your professional school, because the program is like a 7 or 8 year commitment. So you really want to know what you're getting into. And I really want to emphasize the cost of professional school as something you should research. I ended up choosing my program because of residency match rates, but also because there wasn't a more cost effective option, because a private dental school will run pretty expensive. And if I had a public option, I probably would have done that. And dental school admissions are a little harder to reach if you're at the undergrad level, but still, I suggest trying just to get everything answered. So 2B, reflect. This is really helpful for understanding why you want to go into this profession. So when you reflect, you want to reflect on your clinical shadowing and your patient care experience, whether that's volunteering or work. And it's more than just saying, oh, today I watched a filling. I don't really know what else to say. You want to go beyond the technical parts of your shadowing. You want to see, how does this provider interact with their patients? What does this provider value? And how does that shape the kind of provider that you want to become? And then your research experience, I had a little bit of this, but it wasn't like wet lab research. I just kind of did data analysis based research. But you need to be able to talk about any research you've done beyond just like, oh, I sat down, I made a spreadsheet. You need to emphasize why it's important and why it's meaningful to you. And then your passions and work beyond healthcare are really important too, because again, these colleges don't want perfection, they want people. So they want to see why you're passionate about what you do. And everything you do feeds into the person you'll become, even if it isn't directly related to your career. Even if your interests are scattered, like as long as you're intentional about what you're doing and there's a purpose to it, whether it's enjoyment, helping the communities you care about, or just like developing yourself more, and you make that show in an application, they'll see its value. And then as long as people understand why things are important to you and how those passions will become strengths in your career, I think it's worth it to write about those too. So this is the prompt: why medicine, why dentistry? To answer this question, draw on specific experiences, I want to start by saying there's a lot of social media content that says to help people is not something you should say. I disagree. You should absolutely want to help people. If you don't want to help people, this profession, like healthcare, like we need people who want to help people. But you want to expand on that. You want to be specific about the impact you want to have, why medicine or dentistry is the best way for you to do it, and what you've learned through your clinical experience, through your other extracurriculars, and how you'll apply that to your profession later. So interviews, there's a lot of different types of interviews you can do. There's multiple mini interviews, which I see as sort of like speed dating. You get like a very short time to answer a question about a scenario or just like a quick question about yourself, and then you rotate. I didn't do any of these. I know that they exist. A standardized interview, virtual or in person, one on one. And then unstructured, there's a lot of ways that could go. Fortunately, I didn't have unstructured. And then I had a panel interview where multiple people interviewed me at once, but there are also panels where multiple applicants are interviewed at the same time. And then situational judgment tests are similar to multiple mini interviews, except it's one-on-one. So how do you prepare? To start, here are some commonly asked questions. And so when it comes to ethical scenarios, because we haven't discussed those yet, there are a lot of ones that you'll get. And it's just good to have the really quintessential ones down. A lot of the time, they'll ask, like, what would you do if you saw a student cheating? The answer, you report it, because ethics. But it's not so simple sometimes. Sometimes you have to acknowledge the nuance of a situation, but in the end, like, there are right answers to these scenarios. You just have to frame it in a way that makes the interviewer understand that you understand that it's a little more gray than right or wrong. And then they just ask a lot of questions about you as a person, and that's so they understand how you'll add to their school at the undergrad and graduate level. And another thing, they'll ask you about things listed in your resume. Like I talked about a sewing venture that I turned into a small business, and a lot of interviews asked about that. So that was cool. And then just prepare questions to ask them at the end. And that's where the research comes in about your school programs. And then just to get ready, practice mock interviews with friends and family, like Isabella said. And then on the day of the interview, dress formally, even if there's no dress code specified. I always find that when they see that you take them seriously, they will take you seriously. And then after the interview, send a thank you note, but it can't just be a generic thank you so much for interviewing me. You have to take it a little further, maybe mention something that you talked about with the interviewers, and then mention something about the school that you're really excited to get involved in. Sometimes you get a reply, sometimes you don't, but it's always good to send. And then this, I don't know if you're supposed to do it. I did it. It worked out. You have to stay busy and send updates. So some of my first program applications were submitted November 2024, with the release dates being April 2025. That's a lot of time. So it's important to stay busy during that time. So for me, in between my initial submission to some programs and my final acceptance, I shadowed another specialty. I went to go shadow general dentistry because I did orthodontics and pediatrics. And then continue your research, your volunteer work, your internships, or patient care. I stayed involved with Saturday Scholars. I kept going with my research, and then I pursued a pediatric dentistry internship during my spring semester, even though common sense would have said to just relax. And then just staying involved in the things you're doing. And then when you're doing all of that, send an update to the medical or dental schools in the form of a letter of continued interest. These should be short and to the point. Just briefly discuss what you've been doing, reaffirm your interest in the profession, school, and program. One of the schools I got accepted to, this really helped my application because I just had a lot more clinical experience by the time I submitted my letter of continued interest than when I submitted my initial application, and I think that really gave my application a boost. And then you get to choose your program. Hopefully, there are a lot of options that you like, but these are just some things to consider. Honestly, I don't want to use too much time to go through these because I know we have a Q&A session, but I think emphasizing again program cost and scholarships, because that is what makes your involvement sustainable, but also GPA requirements, because if the requirements are too rigorous to stay in, you'll end up creating some of the same stress you were trying to avoid. There are a lot of ways to become a doctor or a dentist. A dual degree program is just one route. And then if you do consider applying to these, it's like a marathon. You got to stay passionate. Don't let rejection discourage you. And remember that things work out in the end, even if in unexpected ways. If they don't work out, there's nothing wrong with going the traditional route. You get to grow yourself in a lot of different ways instead of staying in such a narrow lane. But you guys got this. It's going to be good.
Thank you so much, Bien, for that very. Oh, sorry. Wait. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much for that very deep insight into this process and programs and everything you touched, like every point. Thank you. And thank you all our panelists for all of your insights into every aspect of the college process. And Ishika is going to walk us through like a final college checklist.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, next slide. Okay, cool. So this is generally what, like a checklist for people that are applying soon, just general, like basic things that we should have completed by, I guess, December-ish if you're applying regular decision. But yeah, first you have your common application. This is the primary application that gets sent to literally pretty much every college you apply to. I think some colleges, some exceptions, make you go into their own portal to apply. But for the most part, you want to make sure that your common app is something that, reflects who you truly are. Just make sure that you're satisfied with things like your personal statement, with your activity section. You should double check your Common App to make sure it's exactly what you want to put out. Like, you don't want to have any, typos that you kind of missed along the way. You want to kind of make sure it's good by the time you send it out. And then after making sure your Common App is done, you have school-specific materials, supplemental essays. Some schools have you kind of self-report all your grades and SAT scores and ACT scores. Some have you send them officially through College Board too. So it's important that you make sure that all of your school-specific materials are completed. I also think it's good to make sure your supplemental essays they aren't repeating anything that you wrote in your personal statement. I mean, you can talk about the same things, but you don't really want to be redundant with them. So yeah, getting those school-specific materials accomplished is also the next thing, I guess. After that is financial materials. You should have a list, or I guess kind of a plan for finances when you're applying to schools. Complete your FAFSA and your CSS profile. These get sent to schools kind of to see, like by the deadline, if you're, like how much aid you're going to receive from the government. So it's important to get those informations completed on time. Some schools have like merit-based aid. So if you apply according to those specific programs, I think like BU has one if you apply by a certain deadline. So it's important to consider what financial opportunities each school has and to make sure that you're doing them kind of correctly on time. And then once your applications are in, like Leanne said, it's still important to be busy or like keep busy. Like, I guess you can relax, but keeping your grades up, especially for colleges that require kind of interim, like midterm reports, and most colleges require that you send them your grades kind of in the next couple of quarters. So it's important to keep them up, keep up your extracurricular involvement. In case you get like deferred or waitlisted, it's important to continue your activities so that you can send a really good letter of continued interest. It's also good to prepare for any interviews in case you have them. So yeah, stay busy even when your decisions are being processed. And then I guess final touches, this is kind of the last stretch. Make sure that any letter of continued interest or are like in if you're waitlisted, and complete your interviews. And yeah, review all your acceptances and review all the financial offers. And it's really up to your own personal values to see what you want out of a college experience. And then eventually you will make your decision kind of by May-ish and then submit your enrollment, I think.
Thank you. So now we're just gonna have a little Q&A session. So feel free to ask any questions about the college process or any specific questions you may have for like a specific speaker or panelist. Sorry, I thought I was unmuted. Can you hear me? Oh, okay, thank you. And yeah, so anyone can feel free to unmute and ask a question. And we have some questions as well if needed.
I wanted to ask a question kind of to Anthony, Jeannie, and Yen. I think they all said that they had research. I was wondering, did you get letter of recommendations from any of your mentors? And also, did you submit any supplemental research material? I know some offer, but I don't know kind of how to go about that.
Yeah, I did ask for a letter of recommendation from not my mentor, but the professor that my mentor was under. Because they normally do the supplementals for the rec letters for that. And I didn't submit any extra materials, but I think it could definitely help if you have them. Like I don't think you should like not put them in if the college allows it.
I didn't ask for any recommendations for like college apps. For scholarships I did, which helped a lot. And for the supplemental materials, I went to a lot of conferences and made a lot of posters. So I submitted those for like some of my like accelerated PhD programs, which worked out pretty well.
I was pretty minimally involved in research, so I didn't really make a great connection with my PI. But I think if you're going to submit supplemental research materials, just be able to explain the importance and don't just like tack it onto the additional information section just without context.
Thank you. I was also wondering, do you guys have any general advice for the additional info section? Some people say to like list everything you couldn't fit in your activity section. I don't know if that's the best. I just wanted to.
I think colleges prefer for the additional information section to be like outstanding circumstances, like maybe you got very sick during your junior year and you couldn't go to some of your classes and it impacted your transcript, or maybe you like broke your leg or something and that impacted your studies. But beyond that, I wouldn't flood it with your activities. I would just choose 10 of your like most impactful activities and really discuss those throughout your activity section, and that should be enough. You shouldn't need the additional information section too much.
I had a question. So, as a junior, and also for any juniors who may watch this, what did your typical what did your junior year throughout the school year and through the junior year summer look like for you guys in terms of building your ECs for your application, or just in general? What did you guys do your junior year?
Yeah, I think it's if you know what you want to do as like a major, it's really important to start creating your story early. Um, which is something that I feel like I didn't really do very well, but you know, it's all fine. I mean, it's really normal to not know what you want to do. Um, as for junior year, I don't think I did anything out of the ordinary for the year itself. I continued to do research over the summer. Definitely start your personal statement early. For me, the idea that I started with was completely different from my end result, like the concept of it. So it was really good to have the extra time to be able to craft the latter essay for it to look
Mm.
like I wanted it to look like.
Mhm. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, I'd never written anything that narrative before, and then suddenly I was faced with all of these essays, the personal statements, supplementals. So I started with writing some supplementals from prompts of previous years, and this was just to because supplementals are a little more specific, so it helps you narrow down some things that really stick out to you about yourself. Just naturally, you begin talking about these things. And then from that, I took some of my supplementals and I started crafting my personal statement by extending them and writing multiple iterations. And this was all of summer of junior year going into senior year. I spent a lot of time just doing as many essays as I could so that by the time school started, you'll be busy with like grades your senior year. So I had most of my essays done by then. I think throughout junior year, my main focus was testing, like the SAT and ACT. And I definitely think you don't need to have as much emphasis on testing as I did. I did like multiple rounds of both tests, which is just like unnecessary. I think you just need like a decent score and it's good enough. But that is one thing I would stress. Definitely get your testing done as early as possible because that's just one thing that you can immediately slash off your plate and you can really direct your focus towards your essays.
Mm. Thank you.
I agree with Isabella. I waited really long to finish my testing. I think I took my last SAT like October of senior year, which was kind of annoying. But I definitely get your procrastination in check because I did that a lot senior year and it kind of like came back to get me because I definitely didn't apply to as many colleges as I wanted to. But I think my junior year was a little bit different because I had just moved to Gilderland. So my biggest focus was getting like a relationship with teachers that I could ask for letters of rec, really, and kind of like finding a place for myself in Albany. But I think I did that pretty okayly. And for the summer, I really started working on research a lot more. I spent like 80 hours a week in the lab, just like running experiments and stuff, which I think really helped my relationship with our PI and like my professor especially. And I think you should really start trying to figure out what you want to do junior summer because that'll really make your senior year way easier.
I think my biggest thing junior year, like halfway through, I realized I have a lot more time than I think I do. So I had been like really like laser focused, like, okay, I'm gonna come home, I'm gonna study, I'm gonna get this done, done, done. And I was really worried that I had to maintain that level of just like having school be like the center of everything to maintain the same standard or quality. It's not so much the amount of time you put into your work, even though that is important, it's how you manage your time. So I think really mastering that junior year and not being afraid to jump into new opportunities is really going to help your application. Because I went into senior year with that mindset, and I think after having done all those new experiences, after realizing, oh, it's just time management, I do have the time, I was able to write a lot more strongly about what I cared about. So it's just not being afraid to try new things, even though it is junior year.
Thank you.
I had a question. So, did you guys hold leadership in things that didn't relate to your major, or did they all relate to like what you wanted to do in college?
I think the majority of my extracurriculars did not relate to what I wanted to do in college, but I was captain of track and cross country. I was president of multiple clubs, like random clubs, like photography clubs, student government. Um, I don't remember what else, like science Olympiad, and I held positions in some other things, like I was treasurer for Triam and Chamber Strings, and outreach for like March for Our Lives. But really, I think leadership is just a way to show your impact for the club and your dedication for the club. Like you don't necessarily need the title of president, but if you can say or if you can explain what you did for the club, say like you individually raised $1,000 for some thing, or you like managed to get some campaign in, or you like helped local children, blah blah blah. Like even if you were just a member, I think it makes really big difference that you can say what you did rather than just say like, oh, I was like president, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of my ECs were my clubs. I had some kind of leadership position, even though it was wholly unrelated to chemistry. But yeah, it's just mainly just know what your impact was, and if you did any volunteering or something, like write that in the section, Because I remember for track, I was captain my junior and senior year, but I think what I wrote about more was that I did some volunteering track related over the summer with the youth track camp, and I think that showed a lot more impact than just saying that I was captain because there's quite a few captains and there's a lot of varying you know effort levels for each person. So as long as you know what you've done, and definitely write that in.
I didn't have any leadership inside the school because all of my ECs were outside of like the school and like club system. But yeah, I don't have any answers.
Um,
I'm sorry.
no, Bien, go.
Oh, okay. I would say, because a lot of my leadership was also outside of dentistry, but I'd say don't be afraid to take your leadership a step further and change the direction that what you're doing is going in. So, what do I mean by that? So, I'll use tennis and Saturday Scholars as my examples. So, for tennis, I was our varsity captain my senior year, and throughout all my years on the team, I'd been really pushing for like our team to like make bigger impacts on the community. And with that leadership position senior year, I really emphasized making sure that a portion of our raised funds always went to some charity that was significant to the team. And by having the team choose what charity that went to, it just like really deepened the sense of impact that each of our members felt. And then in Saturday Scholars, last year I coordinated our teddy bear clinics. And if you're not familiar with our initiatives, that was where we went to local libraries to teach students about healthcare concepts with stuffed animals. And I guess just when you're a leader, you have the power to work with a lot of other people who are really dedicated to make things move in a direction that is valuable to you and them. So by doing that, you can make your leadership more meaningful than a title, like Isabella said, and just really make a bigger impact on the communities you care about.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had a question. What was like for each of you, what was like the most do you think unique aspect of your application or like your Common App essay? What was the most unique part do you think that like colleges would have like really like stuck to?
I think the research was definitely pretty helpful, especially with the added on of the rec letter from the professor. Um, but I do know like a bunch of other people have that as well, but I don't know. I think that helped me figure out what I wanted to do, and it was what my Common App, my personal statement was about. So I think that probably helped. Um, and for Cornell specifically in my CAS supplemental, I had a relatively unique angle of I talked about Percy Jackson actually and how that was the reason why I wanted to go to that school because initially I wanted to be an architect um because Annabeth was an architect. It's but and I think that was maybe something they haven't seen before and I hope that helped or it was just completely random. I'm not sure. They didn't tell me. So yeah, maybe just some coming in from a unique angle was helpful.
I think I was very interdisciplinary. And I tried to show that throughout all aspects of my application. Like in my supplementals, I talked about multiple different activities together. And for my Cornell supplemental specifically, I actually applied to another program in Cornell using that general supplemental. And the other program like really focuses on an interdisciplinary nature. So like a lot of people going into computer science are very focused on tech. They'll have like coding projects, whatever it is, it's very STEM CS focused. But alongside that, I had like art and music, and I actually wrote about government in my essay, like some aspects of law and politics, which I'm not studying any of that right now, but it did make an impact from my extracurriculars onto my supplementals.
I also wrote a little bit about my research, and I think mine stood out a little bit because I went abroad for some of it. which was, I guess, a little unique. But in my essay, which I do know because the program that I'm in at Cornell sent me like a letter talking about my essay and why like specific parts about it, which was funny. But I talked a lot about like how I like learning languages and linguistics, and I guess that wasn't something they see a lot. So yeah.
Honestly, I still don't know what got me into college. Like, I thought my applications were all pretty average, but I think when they sense you're passionate about what you're talking about, a college is more likely to remember your application. And for me, they were able to see that passion with my education based work, even though I'm going into dentistry, because I just like, from what the teacher who read my essays said, she said that when I talk about education, it's like it's the most important thing in the world to me. And I think that conveying that sense of passion when you're talking about any extracurricular is what's going to make it stand out to college admissions.
Thank you. And I think we can wrap it up after one more question if someone might have one. Okay, I think we can wrap it up. I just wanted to say thank you everyone for joining us today, and thank you to all our speakers and slash panelists for being here today and taking us through each step of the process. It was, I would say, it was really beneficial for everyone here today, and thank you so much for your time. If anyone watching has any questions, you can email us at nextgenSaturdayScholars@gmail.com with any other questions you may have, and always feel free to reach out. You can DM us. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.